Hey there. Thanks for coming. I'm glad you found us. This is the inaugural episode of You're Doing Good. And this show is dedicated to people who do good and organizations that are doing good. And so we're thrilled to have for the first show. And you'll recall that I did That's the Law for about 30 years. And I'm so excited to have a new show. And we're thrilled that you're here with us. And I'm also thrilled about our guests tonight. And who we have tonight are the CEO and the COO from The Second Step, okay? And we're going to get all into what they are and what they do and everything else. But I wanted to just give you a little bit more background, how I got involved with The Second Step, which is that I've been involved in a Harvard Business School consulting project for The Second Step. Got to know them, and I was just so intrigued and so excited about the work they're doing that I'm actually developed a whole show around them, and it's going to be a series now, so it's all their fault, Newton. It's because of them. So anyway, join me in welcoming. First, we want to welcome Susan Ross, and Susan Ross is the Chief Executive Officer of The Second Step. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice
Great
to have you here. We'll also welcome Kaitlyn Mathews, and Kaitlyn is the Chief Operating Officer of The Second Step. Welcome, Kaitlyn.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay. So we'll just begin, Sue, I'll ask you, what is The Second Step? Tell Newton, and it may be well known to Newton, but tell them anyway what The Second Step is.
Sure. So The Second Step is a domestic violence agency based in Newton and serves the greater Boston, really eastern Massachusetts area. Our goal is to really help survivors of domestic violence remove barriers to safety and stability. And so recognizing that people need to heal from their trauma, they need to have support, they need to do safety planning, and they need real concrete solutions to their legal problems, their housing problems, their financial problems. We're here to support survivors in that journey, to walk with them and to help them rebuild their lives after what they've experienced so that they can live safely, independently, and thrive and really find joy and happiness again.
This is such important work, and it's so good. Tell us about you and how you got involved in this.
Sure. So I am an attorney by training, and my first big job out of law school was at the District Attorney's Office in Middlesex County in the Domestic Violence Unit. And I was really struck by how many people were coming back into the court system time and time again as victims of domestic violence, and saw a couple of things. One, that people would come back because there was a new arrest, a new problem. Very often survivors wouldn't want to pursue charges, and that was for a lot of reasons, because they were scared, because they couldn't afford to not have child support or a co-parent, because there's family pressure, religious, all of that thing. And so I was struck that domestic violence is a comprehensive problem that affects every part of a person's life, and that holding somebody, a perpetrator, criminally responsible is a key part to the solution to solving domestic violence, ending it, holding people accountable. But really there needed to be, for people to really heal and really recover and move on and to end that cycle of domestic violence, we really needed to be addressing the whole person. And after spending 5 years in the DA's office, I took some time off to do some other nonprofit work and raise a few kids. And when I came back into the workforce, I was really looking for something like that, where I could use my legal background, where I could use my background and knowledge in domestic violence and really be part of a solution that was more holistic. And I found The Second Step. And so I actually started as a volunteer attorney when our legal services program was fairly new, and just grew with the program to become a staff attorney and then the director of the program, and then about 3 years ago to be the executive director. Yeah. So the big message in all of that is I feel very strongly about this issue and about this organization, and I'm just delighted to be still involved and to be part of the a really remarkable team doing really incredible work.
That's wonderful. And when we're finished tonight, Newton is going to feel very strongly about this organization. Kaitlyn, tell us a little bit of how you got involved.
Absolutely. So I've been in the nonprofit sector for over 10 years now. That did the math. And I started working with women and children in New Haven, Connecticut. And similarly to Sue's kind of observations, there was a lot of folks that I was seeing coming through that were experiencing domestic violence, had fled domestic violence. The access to domestic violence resources and supports was limited, as is all space anywhere. And so that really struck a chord with me. After finishing my master's degree, I moved up to Massachusetts and started working with street homeless youth. Again, seeing domestic violence, seeing youth fleeing their homes to preferably live on the street because of violence in their homes. So this was an issue that was touching populations I was serving across states, across varying degrees. And the Second Step offered me a home as the housing advocate, and that was in 2017. And through my time here, I've grown to not only love the work and continue to find passion in it, but really resonate with all of the staff who are doing such challenging and meaningful work. It's a lot, and I'm excited to be in the position of Chief Operating Officer today.
It's fabulous. And what do you do as Chief Operating Officer? What are your responsibilities?
Yeah, so I basically manage the day-to-day operations of the organization, working really closely with our program directors, our development team. Sue is our Chief Executive Officer, to make sure that we're able to run efficiently, timely, and wanting to make sure that supports are available for survivors as needed. So staffing, hiring, onboarding, all of that goes in between, I have a hand in.
Great. And tell us now, Sue, maybe you'll tell us how Second Step got started. And you told me a very cute story before we came on the air. I want you to tell Newton. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So Second Step started in the late 80s. There were a group of volunteers who were working at a domestic violence emergency shelter. And at the time, people were able to stay in the emergency shelter for about 2 months. And then they had to leave. They were timed out. And what these volunteers noticed was that people were leaving and going back to the abusive, violent home because they had no option.
Yeah.
And they had not had time to heal or to rebuild. And so they said, you know what? Leaving was the first step, but what's the second step? They need somewhere to go. And so this group of volunteers, our 4 founders, came up with an idea that they would start a transitional living shelter program where people could stay for up to 2 years and get these wraparound comprehensive services to help them get on their feet. And the founders were looking for funding, and they were looking for a literal home because of various laws and regulations. And they got a call from Mayor Ted Mann of Newton, and said,
beloved. You have to, when you're in Newton, you have to say beloved.
The beloved,
the beloved Ted Mann.
The beloved Mayor Ted Mann.
Right.
And he said, we want you here. And so we began a long-term lease at an old rectory in Newton. And ever since then, the doors opened in 1992 with our first families coming in. And really, Newton has opened their arms and their hearts and their treasure trove of resources to the Second Step for 35 years. Excellent.
And what are you said comprehensive services, so let's try to dig in a little bit what you do. I know, let's talk about housing a little bit. You're talking about housing stabilization? Mm-hmm. Is that the term?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we know that survivors' needs are unique, and as Sue mentioned, we started out as a transitional living program. Through the years and through various ups and downs in the economy and how survivors have come to us and how needs have fluctuated and housing costs have risen and continue to be a challenge, the Second Step has also had to adapt to that and really wanting to recognize that not all survivors need the same type of support when it comes to housing. And so we really have leaned into the idea of housing stabilization to offer flexible funding to support folks who might need a couple of months' rent, might need a moving truck to get their belongings to a safe location, might need a couple nights in a hotel or a couple weeks in a hotel, may need to get out of state, and so a plane ticket, a train ticket to go stay with a friend or family member that's safe for them. And so really just wanting to respond to survivor needs and be on the edge of working with them and working alongside them.
And it's actually homelessness prevention.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Because if you're not providing them with services, the second step, the first is that they left. They got out of the abusive situation, I'll call it. Sometimes not the relationship, but the abusive situation.
Right. Yeah.
And now the second step, how can they keep going?
Absolutely, and wanting to, ensure that people have access to the supportive services that they need and that work for them and their family, and that isn't always shelter. That's not always the option. So how do we pivot and ensure that we're supporting them in their needs?
Right. Now let's talk about another aspect of your comprehensive services is our Steps to Justice.
Yeah. So Steps to Justice is our legal services program, and it is really near and dear to my heart. It's another example of how we pay attention to what survivor needs are and respond accordingly. And what our staff noticed was that almost everyone had at least one legal issue that they needed to resolve in order to build, to leave the relationship or the situation and move on with their lives. And so really the legal services piece is one of the bedrocks. It's really one of the foundations on which the other healing and recovery happens. So we started that program about 12 years ago, and we have grown now to have 5 attorneys. They do family law that can include divorce, custody, parenting time. Child support is a really big deal because that provides the financial security so that you can keep your family safe. They do restraining orders. We have a team of attorneys that are really expert at restraining orders, and that's a critical piece of the safety planning to have that support. We also do a little bit of immigration. Immigration is a tool of abuse. If somebody can threaten to call ICE if you call the police. It's some reason people don't call the police if they've been abused. So getting somebody's immigration stabilized is a really important piece of the domestic violence puzzle. We do some housing, some work in schools and education and IEPs and that sort of thing. We really try to help, as I said before, remove all of the obstacles. And so because domestic violence touches on so many different parts of a person's life, we really try to have the resources under one building, one roof, where people can come and get those problems solved. So the legal services program does that, and we provide an array of services there too, everywhere from full representation to limited assistance representation to preparing documents, all kinds of things.
Right, and this means that you're both in the district court where you would go to get a restraining order, and you're in the probate and family court because that's where you have to do child issues or
Correct.
Child support, or if the alimony is an issue, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So it's wonderful. We're talking to Sue Ross and Kaitlyn Mathews, who are with the Second Step. And what we're going to do at this point is we're just going to put up on the screen for a minute a hotline you can call if you are the victim of abuse, if you know someone who's the victim of abuse. And throughout this program, we'll have some resources for you. I want to just emphasize a little bit that Second Step is not an emergency resource. It's not where you call the police, you call 911, or you call SafeLink, and those are the numbers that are going to be up. They are the second step, not helping you in that very first step. Right? Fair?
Yeah, that is fair. I think that we are evolving a little bit. Again, what we're seeing is that people are needing a little bit more support on that first step in identifying what is happening to them, identifying that maybe they are in an abusive relationship, understanding some of the danger signs. And so our advocates are actually available to help people sort that out, come up with a safety plan, and figure out how to leave safely.
I want to ask you about that. What goes in, because I've heard some of this as I've been working the Harvard Business School project about safety planning, and I'd never heard that particular term before. And there are a lot of aspects to it.
Absolutely. So safety planning really is the plan for remaining safe for a survivor and their family. And so that can mean, we need to get a go bag ready. It needs to live in your car. Do you have money put away for a hotel? Do you have your emergency contact information for your kids if you have to pull them out of school? Where will you go if you had to flee? What is that immediate response? It's also looking at lethality assessments and figuring out what the kind of risk for lethality is in a situation, particularly as Sue mentioned. Somebody might not understand the kind of danger that they're in. And oftentimes we do see a minimizing of sorts happening where it's not that bad, or it's not as bad as it could be, or it was bad yesterday, but it's not as bad today. And so our advocates work really closely with survivors to ensure that those questions are being answered, and then establishing a plan accordingly to ensure safe transition through all aspects, and even in court too.
Right, because part of an aspect of abuse is the brainwashing, which and the gaslighting.
Correct.
You're wrong, and I didn't say that. When I did say it, and you really fell, I didn't, knock you down the stairs.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of, when you talk about the emotional support, they're not coming from just like a regular place that can often be, because there's a whole thing about grooming someone to become an abuse victim.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So domestic violence is not just physical harm. It's
Right.
That is kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's what's most obvious if somebody sees the harm, but it's really about coercion and control and power. And so there are it's a buildup where there's a lot of coercion and control before it may escalate to physical violence.
Right.
We also know that when you try to change that dynamic, that power dynamic, for example, by leaving, by going to court to get child support, that can be a very dangerous time in a relationship. And so it's really important that survivors have that support ahead of time so that they are making the right kind of plans.
Yep. And one of the other things you had mentioned, I think, in the comprehensive services was emotional support. And this is kind of touching on the emotional support aspects.
Right.
That begins telephone call number one, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, the emotional support can mean everything from, it is not uncommon that the first time somebody has said out loud to another human being, this is happening to me, that's often the phone call to the second step. And so we have highly trained, very compassionate advocates who answer the phone and are able to handle those conversations. So, they are able to listen, to validate, to offer support throughout that process. Kaitlyn can talk a little bit more about some of the services we provide around that in terms of like our support groups and that kind of thing. But the one thing I want to just mention is that going to court itself is, the legal system, as you know, is an adversarial system set up to have winners and losers, and it is a power structure. Right. And so if you're a victim of abuse or a survivor of abuse, you may not even want to go into court because you're kind of, you can feel like you're being victimized again.
Right.
Our advocates help with that. And there are times where the only reason somebody feels like they can even go to court to get a restraining order is because they have the support of our advocates.
And not just the support, you're physically with them.
Physically
Yes.
with them in court.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to put up the number and how to contact this helpline that they have. Again, not an emergency helpline, but the helpline to reach Second Step. And it may not be you. It may be a friend that you want to help out. But they're there, and you can talk to them, and they will support you.
Yeah.
Through the advocacy, through the emotional support. Now, you also are trying to work on prevention. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
Yes. So tell me about prevention.
Absolutely. So prevention education is not new. A lot of agencies and a lot of schools offer some degree of prevention education, where that is, bystander intervention or, creating safe schools and things like that. What we're looking at doing is kind of approaching it on two different fronts. One being youth and young adults, and one being the community in general, and really wanting to make sure that every adult has information about domestic violence and dating violence. Every parent can talk to their child or their sibling about domestic violence and dating violence, can address issues of pop culture, of celebrities that are in the media about dating violence and domestic violence, and not letting those things just kind of slip into the ether. And a lot of our work in the past, and as we continue to develop and expand our program, has been working with local schools and organizations to offer trainings, workshops, webinars, really discussing these issues and wanting to make sure that not only are we talking about domestic violence and how insidious it is, and dating violence and how insidious it is, but really, digging a little bit deeper and talking about self-esteem, healthy boundaries, healthy relationships, modeling what those positive components of a relationship look like. Not just using a scare tactic to say this is bad and don't do it, and here's the scary monster in the corner, but really, how can you go out and endeavor into a safe, healthy relationship where there's consent, there's boundaries, there's communication, and what does that look like?
Right. And how are we doing with prevention? Are the numbers going up or down? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean, prevention, we are excited to have just hired our very first director of prevention education, and we're looking at our opportunities for the upcoming year, and we've already got our calendar. We're working with a lot of organizations right now who are interested in partnering with us to offer this to students, to their employees, local businesses.
What age students are you looking at?
We're really focusing on kind of middle and high school right now.
Middle school and high school.
That's
right.
the focus.
And I know you have a program, an active program at Newton's North.
Newton North, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
student-led club. We're very excited about all the ongoing work that the students at Newton North are doing with the Second Step staff, and all that we continue to do as we go into February, which is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and we've got some really wonderful opportunities that are planned for that month as well.
That's wonderful. And one of the things about it's hard to know statistics because of how often domestic violence does not get reported. Right. When it gets reported, what the seasons are, what the weather is.
Right.
Okay? And I remember I was really struck by the fact, I do this to friends of mine. I say, what do you think? Do you think reporting of domestic violence went up or down during the pandemic? And everybody says, oh, it must have gone way up because, people are confined, they're in the house. I said, actually it went down. The reporting went down because the abused person could not get away to make a phone call.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So it's a tricky kind of thing to measure how you're doing if the statistics are going up or down.
Right.
And the other thing was that we talked about a little bit, and you might want to expand on it, is with more and more awareness, is there more reporting that makes it look like there's more violence when it was there, but it wasn't getting reported as much? People didn't know about the resources.
Right. I think that's true. I think we're at a little bit of an inflection point, I think, now on the issue of domestic violence. I mean, when I started practicing law, the law had just changed to require an arrest or a preferred arrest on a domestic violence call. It was not that long ago that it was considered a private matter, and maybe the offender took a walk around the block and came back, and we didn't talk about it. There was a lot of shame. It was in the shadows. I think a silver lining of the pandemic is that people did start to notice that domestic violence was a big issue, that these shelter-in-place laws, kind of made obvious that home is not a safe place for everybody. And there has been some light that's been shining on this issue. And so I think it's a moment in time where we really have an opportunity to change the cultural conversation and not sort of tacitly tolerate domestic violence. So whether that's in pop culture or with movie stars or with sports figures or even something that we might see in our own friends, family, kids,
neighborhood,
that it's a time now where I think we can all kind of come together with that raised awareness and not accept it.
And what is the best way for someone to access the services of the Second Step?
Absolutely. So
what's the best way to do that?
yeah, so they are welcome to call the number that you posted.
We'll put the number up again. Yep.
They can also email our info@thesecondstep.org email line. Our wonderful intake coordinator checks those phones and those emails daily, multiple times daily, and we get back to folks. I think.
So I'm curious. Do you get calls that say, "Hi, I have a friend, but it's really them"?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
I can't imagine you don't get that.
Oh yeah. I have a friend, or hypothetically, if I knew somebody.
They're here to help. Newton,
Absolutely.
they are here to help, and if you call them, they'll be there for you.
Yeah. We were.
Now, how do you charge for your services? We like to call them survivors, not abuse victims, but how do they have to pay for your services?
Everything is free. We have no
Newton, everything is free. Everything is free.
Every service is
The legal representation, the transitional housing, can be, there's support
advocacy.
services.
Yeah.
Yep, all free.
All free.
And we have very strong relationships with the police, with the courts, with Newton Wellesley Hospital, with doctors' offices, with social workers. So we get a lot of our clients from other providers who are seeing people come through,
Right.
and whether they know or suspect that somebody may be in danger, they will reach out to us.
So you don't charge for your services. How do you support yourselves? Newton, listen carefully. How do you support yourselves?
We raise all of our money. About half of our budget is from government contracts, and the other half is private philanthropy through corporate sponsorships, private foundations, and individual donors. We are, constantly trying to make sure that we have enough money to operate years in the future. So we want to make sure that we're sustainable and that we're here this year, next year, and for as many years as people need us.
And do you have breakdowns of percentages? How much comes from government? How much comes from individual donors or corporations? Or
Yeah, that can actually be accessed on our website for our annual report. All of that information is posted in our About Us section of our website.
Excellent.
So shameless plug for go to thesecondstep.org and check us out there. But we have our breakdown of our annual report. And like Sue said, it's about 60-40 in terms of the private side, the foundations, and government funding.
Excellent. Now, how can people help? What do you need? What can Newton do for you? What can the viewers do for you?
Absolutely.
Well, as I said before, our Newton neighbors have been extraordinarily generous and helpful and supportive of us, and we are so grateful for that, and we feel really lucky to be in this community. We have a number of fundraising opportunities. We have a gala on May 1st this year. It's called Celebrating Success, to celebrate the success of so many survivors. You can get information on that on our website. It's held at the Braeburn Country Club, and it's a really
nice.
It's a really
Yeah.
fantastic event. We have some other events throughout the year, so people, and we take donations any time of the year, any amount, add all the zeros, and so that's a huge piece.
And then, so money.
Money.
Money. Okay. And what about volunteers? Do you use if I said I'll come and help, what can I do? Do you need me? What could volunteers do?
Yeah, so we have had volunteers in most recent history help put together our court accompaniment bags that are given to survivors that are going to court.
Court, say that again because you said it quickly.
Yep. Court accompaniment bags. And that's a nice little tote bag that are given to survivors that are going to court. Has a bottle of water, granola bar, a fidget spinner, some tissues, a myriad of other things, a little journal, a notebook, just things to help ease someone's anguish, anxiety
So
during
could people call? We're posting the number. You can also go on the website. And could they call and say, "Can I help? Do you need anybody? If you want to come down?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do use volunteers from time to time.
We do. And the other thing that people can do, we've talked a lot about awareness and prevention, and really our hope and goal is that, as Kaitlyn said, every adult understands what some of the red flags of a domestic violence situation are. We all know somebody. We may not know we know somebody, but if we're a little bit more aware, we can see that, and they can send us. They don't have to be experts. They know we're here.
Thank you so much. This is the second step. We've had Sue Ross and we've had Kaitlyn Mathews. This has been fabulous. Good luck to you, and I hope this show prompts some help from Newton, because you deserve it. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on You're Doing Good.